Hello and welcome back to Art Masters with me, Mrs. Portilla. Today we'll be learning about an artist, Helen Hardin. Helen Hardin had strong ties to Native American symbolism and Kachinas. She used abstract art to make these Kachinas, geometric shapes, repeated patterns, and lines. So today we'll be making some Kachinas using geometric shapes, repeated lines, and different line elements and patterns. So once you're ready, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, to get started on our Kachina, we're going to have some templates to help us with the basic shapes. Remember, she used geometric shapes and the element of line, symbols, and pattern. So Native American symbols, water, lightning. Then you'll notice, oh, look at that step shape for the cloud and that zigzag shape for the lightning. So we'll notice when we look at Helen Hardin's work, there's a lot of background, geometric shapes, and that step shape that represents the cloud. Let's use that little scrap piece of paper that we have, and we're gonna fold this. So we're gonna fold it once, we're gonna fold it twice, then we're gonna grab some scissors, and I'm gonna cut on this folded edge to get like a step shape. So I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna go over, I'm gonna go down and over. Maybe you wanted to try folding it even more. Let's try folding it again and again. Let's try another fold. I'm gonna cut on this side. And let's see if I could get like just like that. Okay, so I folded it a bunch and I just cut one little triangle. I did a fold, and a fold. And then I just cut off that little top there. This one, just folded it once. You could even try folding that again and see what happens. Okay, so let's use our little paper to cut and get a little shape for our template. Okay, excellent. So we should have one little thing, and maybe trade with your neighbor. If they have a cool one, you guys could use that as well. And I'll even have some of these. Okay, so now we have a little background thing. Oh my goodness, look at that scrap. Never discount those scraps, right? Because we could even use those for templates later. Okay, so perhaps you want to do, there's the crow Kachina, which I'll have a picture of. There's the horned owl, or maybe you just want to do a simple circle face with those circle whorls for hair, or maybe just a circle face with geometric shapes. If you want to get crazy, this is a pretty cool horned owl. So I'm going to do a shape for a face, and I'll try the horned owl. So to get our main shape for the head, you'll either have manila paper or white paper. So if I want to put it right in the center, that's a little less interesting than if I put it just slightly off to the side and down. So that's what I'm gonna do. If you're comfortable using your black pen to trace, cool. Otherwise, we could just do our initial drawing with our pencil. So I like to hold it with my whole hand, and I'm not pushing hard, guys. I'm very lightly going around. Okay, so that would be for my face, slightly off center. For the horned owl, it still has a pretty rounded head, right? So I'm gonna start with that shape. So this one, again, I like to put a little off center, but maybe this one I'll put a little bit higher. I might not trace the entire shape. I might just go about halfway. Now, so let's get our main shape for a head or a horned owl, or maybe you wanted to work on the crow, which still has that rounded head shape. It just has more interesting feathers on the outside. Excellent. So we're continuing with templates just because we want an exact shape. So I'm going to leave you with these cups. Maybe you have something else that's round that you could trace around. Go for it. Okay. So I'm going to use this because this is the simplest, and I'm getting the basic shapes. So eyes, right? So I'm going to use my glue stick. So I'm going to trace this eye. Very lightly, guys, very lightly. You guys like to push super hard and then you get upset about erasing. We're gonna go over this with black pen, so really light if you can. Again, if you have a little circle thing or a triangle thing that you wanna trace, let's get creative here. Otherwise, you'll use those little templates that I have. I could use the back of this cup too, which would be a little bit of a smaller circle. Okay, so I have some eyes. This, I'm gonna get a little creative. I'm gonna use the side of my plate as a template to make this little curved triangle shape. So this one for eyes, you could have circle eyes, you could have triangle eyes. Okay, so this one, let's do a triangle, and I'm gonna do this kind of triangular nose. So you could just watch me, and then again, this is your Kachina. So as long as you're using geometric shapes, and it's looking like either a person Kachina or the sun god Kachina, the crow. So I'm gonna use this for a triangle nose. So the first thing I might do is I might split my head in the center. So I'm kind of eyeballing the center there. And then I'm gonna use my scratch sheet of paper. I'm gonna do this very lightly, my friends. Like very, 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 very lightly. Okay, so now I have kind of the center of my face, my abstract face. And now I'm gonna draw, if you want a really long nose, you're gonna make a really long nose, right? Abstract. And then I'm gonna take my straight edge and go down. So I'm gonna draw an eyebrow line. And now we could do a kind of different shape. This person did very triangle eyes all the way across the paper, did some kind of off-centered triangles to the hair. So I'll probably add some hair. So let me do a triangle eye. And again, I'm gonna use my straight edge. And I'm gonna do what I do to one side, I'm gonna do to the other for balance. And then I'm gonna connect those edges, just like that. And I'm gonna connect those. So if you're doing the horned owl, you don't have to copy my eyes. You could just do one circle. You're gonna add some eyes and maybe a slight detail on the head. For the face, you could do any face. You're gonna add some sort of a nose and maybe the top of your eye or the basic eye shape. Let's add a mouth and more detailed eyes. So I'm still using my pencil just to be comfortable. Once I get to the details, I'll use my black pen. I'm gonna go make an eye. So I might wanna just mark it before I use my straight edge. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw a slightly angled line, just like that. And then I'm gonna connect it. I want this to be even, so I'm gonna put a little dot there. I'm okay with using my pencil on this because I have a pretty steady hand. If not, use your straight edge again. My mouth is gonna be straight. Maybe you have a sad mouth. That's totally fine. Maybe you have a circle mouth, okay? You could use that and make it a circle, okay? You could use this and make it a straight shape. I like to make the top or the bottom a little longer, and then they get a little middle point of their mouth, and then you could decide how you want to end the edge. Up is going to make it seem a little bit more happy, where down would make it seem a little more sad. My horned owl person did the beak facing this way. Maybe you want the beak facing the other way, but you'll notice that circle shape. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have mine facing this way only because I have more room on this side. I'm going to start with my circle, and I'm not going to go all the way around. And then I'm going to put a little dot where I want the beak to end. If you want, you can use your plate, which will give you that perfectly curved shape. I could just draw a little line like this for a mouth, going all the way to the edge or not, okay? But I'm also going to cut off the head here. Now I'm not gonna draw through my face because that would be strange. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go here, stop, here, stop. So we have a beak and maybe like a body. My friend's gonna have hair. Maybe your friend just has a little shape and not hair. And then they do need some sort of body, right? So I'm gonna do the body a little diagonal. This doesn't have to be even. This might be more interesting. And then remember, Helen Hardin did whorls, right? Those big, almost like little circular buns on her people. So this has one big one and two small ones. Maybe you just wanna go right above an extra hairline that will color in later. Maybe you want the whorls, so they could be floating off the side of her head. They could be attached to her head, right? Her stuff is abstract. And then maybe you wanna continue on and connect her hair. Maybe yours just has hair and you're gonna add feathers. Just think about geometric shapes. Your feathers might be square, rectangle, or triangles. Geometric feathers on the top, okay? So right now we're just thinking about the body and just that little extra whorl or hair. If you're doing this one, you're gonna do the beak and you're gonna give some sort of body using your straight edge. Okay, I'm gonna have you guys start with your marker. Before you go over something, make sure that's where you want it. If you don't like a certain pencil line, you can just don't go over it with your marker, okay? So I'm still gonna use my straight edge, but I find sometimes we feel a little bit more confident in getting our basic shapes down with pencil first. So maybe I wanna start with this outside line. So I'm not pushing hard, the pen should just work. And now I can't see anymore, so I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna look, okay? I'm gonna do a little freehand there. All right, now I'm gonna do my main face. This one. Let's say I decide I actually wanna make this a little more interesting and I'm gonna draw this instead. Great, I'm not even gonna bother erasing that because maybe I'll turn that line into something else later. If you accidentally cut through your guy's head, don't do that with the marker, that would be silly. So let's use the templates that we had and let's go over our main shapes with our pen. Okay, excellent. So we have our main shapes with our pen. Maybe your teacher has some of these little thin markers, maybe you have them, maybe a Sharpie. You could use the different pens if that helps you. So remember our cool little cutouts, right? We're thinking about lightning, mountain, water, clouds. She even does some corn. 2 lines means a warrior, so we're gonna use a lot of those parallel lines. She just does some patterns of just repeated lines. You could use some of these templates if you want. You could use the one you cut, or you could even just use some straight lines. At the end, we'll add just a slight bit of color, so we do want some negative space, so don't get too crazy here. All right, so for this one, I'm not even gonna use the whole template, like I might offset it a little bit, like this, okay? So I'm gonna go right in with my pen because I feel like this is the background and we're a little bit more comfortable. You could even double up here. So this one, I think I'm gonna put on this side and just be mindful with your pen. I'm not gonna cut into his body. Offset thing here because it just makes it interesting, right? So I'm gonna do a wavy, and then we like those parallel lines, right? Those repeated patterns. So that's just an initial background. So let's use those little templates we have and let's kind of get a background. And we're not gonna be filling them in just yet. We're just getting those basic shapes for our layout, thinking about balance. So you'll know. So we're thinking about those symbols if you want. Friendship are these cool little swirls. Lightning looks pretty cool. I might add some lightning. And then remember, a lot of these Kachinas had feathers. So I'm gonna give him a little neckline. Okay. So now I'm making him a little bit more interesting in his body. And I'm gonna add some shapes in his eyeballs and maybe even his mouth. I think I'm gonna add a circle. Those almost look like beaded necklaces, right? I like that. That person had 2, that person had 3. So guess what? I'm gonna use my plate. So we're adding a little bit more detail to our Kachinas here. So let's just start filling in a little bit with some more shapes, thinking about symbols and lines. So we have the horned owl, and you'll notice on his kachina, he definitely has feathers. So this person just put some of these very simple feathers. So depending on how much room, there's a big side. So if yours is off to the side, we can add some big feathers, or we could even add just these very geometric type feathers. It's a triangle. So let's add a couple of feathers. So we're gonna add maybe some feathers or symbols, and we're thinking about balance. So for instance, I have these two big circles here. I could use something here, maybe a feather, maybe a whirl. All right, my friends, let's start some black. So you could use my special pens. If you happen to have a washable black marker or a Sharpie, that's probably helpful. I'm gonna color some blacked out spots. The hair is a pretty good choice, right? And if you do the hair, you might only want one other spot. They blacked out the inside of the eyes and just a couple of shapes. So we could black out a couple of shapes. So just watch for a sec. Don't color in too much. Can't go back. So you color and you look, okay? Color and look. All right, excellent. So you'll notice maybe your pen starts to get a little icky. So you just want to go and make a couple little shapes, but that's why we're not coloring in everything. I'm not going to color it in. I'm going to add some repeated lines. Line quality. If I do have a thicker pen, I might put a thick line around the edge and just the center. Okay. So line quality, when you do a thicker line, it makes it almost look like it has a shadow, and it makes it look a little bit more three-dimensional. So if you don't have that pen, you could just go over your line to make it a little bit thicker. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's add some more interesting lines and patterns. So this person continued on with those ziggy-zag lines and added an inside shape. There's some dots, and then there's this repeated shape. Okay, this person filled in some of these background shapes with these lines with a straight edge, and look at that intricate feather. It's really just a line in the middle with some diagonal lines. So we can do some cross-hatching lines. Is everything filled in with line? It's not. There's a lot of negative space. We want that empty or negative space. Lines. When you have really thick lines, it almost looks like it's colored in. So let's explore with these cool lines. Thick, thin, cross-hatching, or dotted, okay? Okay, my friends, so we should have patterns inside of our shapes. Everything should be done in marker. So I see dots here. I'm gonna balance this out by adding dotted lines, which Anasazi technique of splattering. Remember, she looked at a lot of Native American art. Looking pretty good. I notice I still have some pencil lines here. So I could erase those, or I could turn those into something. Okay, so let's do some final pen touches. Looking for that balance. So does one side feel more weighted than the other? Do I need one little more shade of black somewhere to look balanced? Okay, so we're thinking about final touches with our pens. So we'll notice with Helen Hardin, she has some color. They're usually harmonizing color. It's not a bunch of color. We're gonna add just a little bit of color. This person just used orange and yellow. This person has just a little bit of that yellow and blue. So we're only gonna do like 2 to 3 colors. And we're gonna want our newsprint for this. So newsprint and pastels. So you guys could share these pastels if you're missing a color. So we only wanna pick 2, maybe 3 colors. So for this one, since I have a white paper, I'm gonna use blue, red, and I'm gonna throw yellow out there. And so we have our newsprint. I'm not gonna color directly onto this. I'm just gonna do a little dusty powder here. So now I'm gonna use my tissue, and I'm just gonna put this in the background. I'm not thinking too much, but I'm still thinking about balance. So if I go across like this, I could just go all the way across, and then I'm gonna go across the bottom, because I like that to have a nice balance. I might put a little bit in the middle with a little couple of circles, and there. Okay, so I just did maybe 4 to 5 spots with blue. Now I'm gonna switch to the red. You can move your tissue or you could just keep it. Okay, red's gonna be maybe bright, so I'm gonna start maybe in this little whirl and come into her face, little circles. I'm gonna make a little bit more dust. And I'm just gonna go one more spot with the red because it's quite bright. But I notice a little spot right here. So I'm gonna use a different part of my tissue. I'm gonna grab this yellow and I'm gonna put a nice smattering of yellow there. And then I'm gonna put a little bit up here. So if you want to add a little bit of color, barely hint, we could do so with the manila paper. It's gonna be a little bit different. This one I might stick to those tones. I'm gonna use a brown, maybe a red, maybe an orange. And I'm gonna do the same thing. Okay, last but not least, I will give you one last option, maybe for you 5th graders, if you would like. You put your signatures. If you'll remember, Helen Hardin put a lot of her names, right? She put her regular name and her name in Native American. So I might hide my initials just right here with my pen. We are going to get our black paper. We're gonna glue it on, and then we're gonna make sure that we have that Helen Hardin on the back. So great job, my friends, today with your Helen Hardin Kachinas. Okay, great job, my friends, doing your Kachinas by Helen Hardin. I hope we all have some very different and exciting looking Kachinas. If you have time to evaluate, let's evaluate line quality, like the thickness, thinness, maybe there's a dotted line, the balance, and just some positive things about each other's art. So I hope you enjoyed doing your Native American Kachinas with Helen Hardin. We'll see you next time on Art Masters.